Good morning. So last week we started talking about an old book from the early 1900s that is still considered to be one of the best books on living a successful life. It was written by a man named Napoleon Hill. It's published in 1937 and has gone on to have over 30 million copies sold. Think and Grow Rich. So last week we talked about letting go, not responding to those error thoughts, those thoughts that we get in our head that may not be the ones that best serve us, and how we apply a more affirmative or positive thought to change the direction of our life. And so this week, Heidi and I are going to get a chance to talk about another element that Napoleon Hill found when he interviewed these 500 highly successful people. He found that each and every one of them didn't do it on their own. All 500, not one, did it all by themselves. They had trusted advisors, they had dear friends, they had colleagues, and they had experts that helped them achieve their dreams. And so today we're going to start talking about this simple formula called masterminding, which is a way that each of us can work with others in order to be able to live the life of our dreams. And I wanted to start out with a great story from Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill told it was about a guy named Russell Darby. And he lived in the 1800s and was alive during the gold rush. And he was living in Maryland at the time and hearing all this great information about, go west, there's gold in them there hills. And so he took all the money he had and he went out to Colorado and staked his claim and started to dig for gold. And he got lucky. He found some gold very early on, and he took it to the assay office and found out that, yes, you've got good, pure gold. You've got something here. You should go and really work at this. So he goes back to his stake and he starts working and hard and all this and trying to get it out, and he gets his first amount of gold, and the assay office says, oh, I think you got a big one here. I think this might be the biggest one I've ever seen. Now you go out, you probably need some special equipment. You better go get that so that you are going to be a millionaire. So Darby went out and he took the rest of the money that he had and he bought the special equipment. And he went back to stake his claim and started working and working and working, excited about the chance that he was going to be a millionaire. And he couldn't find any more gold. He looked and looked. He used the special equipment. He kept trying hard. He was working diligently day and night, and for some reason, no more gold was coming. Finally, he got discouraged. He said, I guess my dream won't be found. And so he sold the equipment for a ticket to go back to Maryland. He sold it to a junk man who didn't know much about mining either. And after Darby had gone, the junk man kept thinking about what had happened here, what was going on. And the junk man knew an engineer who was actually good at this sort of stuff, and he asked the engineer to come take a look and see what might have gone wrong. And the engineer discovered that where Darby had been digging was 3 feet from the gold. 3 feet. 3 feet was the difference between being a millionaire and going home with nothing. The junk man, with his trusted advisor, was able to take the equipment that he had bought from Darby and became a millionaire. So Darby learned of this, and he could have had 2 different responses. First, he could have been really irritated at the junk man for not telling him that maybe he should have gone to an expert. He could have thought that that junk man stole my millions, that if it wasn't for that junk man, I could have been a millionaire. But instead, Darby decided to learn from that situation, and he learned 2 things. And one was, first, don't give up too soon. You might be just 3 feet from the gold. And second is, ask for help. There's incredible value for each of us that we have to ask for help and to help others.
Well, I think it's pretty much what you were saying at the very beginning, that none of these people did it alone. You know, that part of the idea of the mastermind is that we really hold the high watch for not only, you know, for ourselves, but really people can see that for us often before we can see it. So the idea of this journey that we'll talk about is, you know, if you've ever done a series, you know, if any of you have been in any of these prosperity series or been in classes with people over a period of time, you know, their awakening has this huge effect on you. It's like, gosh, you know, if this person can find this right position or this right relationship, then certainly that can happen for me also. So I love that the story of that this person really, as he got some assistance, he was able to discover something rather than this person just on his own.
Yeah, that's a great point. And in fact, what ended up happening is Darby ended up making millions of dollars selling. He became a great salesperson, and he ended up being one of the people that Napoleon Hill interviewed. So I thought that was great. That
Excellent.
Exactly as you said, he ended up being the inspiration for others.
We're going to do there's 7 steps in the mastermind process, and we are going to alternatively cover the first 4.
So let's rock. We thought it would be, Heidi and I thought it would be helpful to actually read the 7 steps. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go through the 7 steps, but think about this in terms of what you yourself are working on. You know, last week we talked about, what do you want most? Ask yourself that question. What do I want most in life? And taking that dream or aspiration that you have and thinking about starting to work with that with another person. And so how this process works is that you look carefully and find what we call a mastermind partner. Think about somebody that you know that is a person that you would like to spend some time with, that you feel inspired and encouraged by. Somebody that you might want to inspire and encourage yourself. And then here's the simple 7 steps that you would go through with this other person in order to manifest your dreams.
And I like that you're calling them, I think you used the word simple, but as we know, changing the way you see the world sometimes is not so easy. So we'll present them, and then you can practice them for the rest of your life. Yeah.
Right on.
There you go. Yeah, a day at a time.
On. Okay, let's start with number 1. It talks recognition. I gratefully acknowledge that there is a loving, creative power for good in the universe, which is active within me and all others. I now claim my oneness with that power, which is the mastermind of my life. So I ask everybody in this moment of thinking about in this moment, you may be there. It may be easy for you, simple, to recognize that there is a force for good that we can tap into.
And I know that many folks, when they talk about coming into unity, you and I have both shared that when we came in, this feeling of there's one power and one presence, and something that was really a new concept for me, and you know, that I thought God was out there, God was male, God was, you know, all these things that felt very separate from me. So this place of there's one loving creative power, and it can be a very emotional experience. I know when we both talked about sitting in the back of the church, you know, feeling all this emotion, and could this experience really exist within me? It was, I remember that commercial, I could have had a V8. You know, I thought, oh my gosh, I could have like lived a life that was about a loving God rather than the sense of a judgmental, separate sense of God.
Well, and I think that, I know for me as well, as Heidi said, sometimes when you're first hearing these concepts, they're like, oh yeah, right. Oh, that can't possibly be true. But I think for me, the same way, I had to at least imagine that it was possible. I imagined that there might be this force for good. So even if you're not feeling like you're at that point where I got it, it's every cell of my body thinks this is true, even if you just have an inkling, even if you're willing to just look for the good, there's amazing things that can come from that. So this very first step is just setting the foundation. Look for the good. Imagine that there is good out there in the world working on your behalf.
The universe plots for my good.
Oh, I love that.
And this recognition, got a recognition, but this reworking of your mind. We know cognition is the mind. And so, it really is this place of just imagining. If I imagined this force of good in the world within my life and that the world is plotting for my good, how would I see, what kind of person would that manifest in the world?
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Yeah. Imagine what it would be.
Isn't it great to have people say you're awesome? That's awesome. How many
You're
times did
awesome.
when you say something, somebody goes, "That's awesome." People might have said something else about what you said earlier in your life.
So we set the foundation of recognizing, imagining that there might be some good out there, and then we start believing.
Start believing, yes. And I know the other thing that has happened to me when I come into new thought, we can call it, as far as this kind of thinking. It's sort of old thought, but it can feel new when you recognize this power that's within you and in all things. You get this opportunity to start looking at what you believe. When we have done these prosperity courses and when I've looked at prosperity, it's said that if you want to know what you believe, look at your life. It can be, what I'm believing is out picturing in my life. We can see so much life happening, to me rather than through me. And when we get this idea that what I believe is really what is showing up, it is a process of being able to say, what would I like to believe? How would I like to change the idea? And so it said, I believe that there is a creative intelligence and power responding to me, to which all things are possible. It is not I, but the spirit within that doeth the work. I know when Thomas, Jesus came back in his resurrected form, and Thomas said, I don't believe this, I want to touch you. And Jesus said, well, sure. He said, and that's one way of believing. I'm not gonna believe it until I see it. But he said, but when you really want to awaken, you'll believe it first, and then you'll see it. And so this is what our invitation is to let ourselves be in this possibility thinking. What would I love to experience? What would I, as you asked at the very beginning, Janet, what do I want in my life? To even start looking at these desires and these beliefs rather than what I don't want. We spend a lot of time on what I don't want rather than what I do want. And how can I start believing that relationships are healthy, or that that finances flow easily in my life, or that I have work that is joyful for me, or that my health is good. These places where we get to shift what we're believing, and to look at how we are very attached to an old story. I know I was considering some of these stories because when you're young, you're sort of a sponge and you don't really get that you can say, Mom, that was kind of a strange way to look at the world, or Dad, I don't really agree with that. We grow up, we're a particular religion, or we're a particular gender, or we're a particular way that we learn in school, and so you're very geared to be in a belief system that maybe is not originally yours. I know I was raised in the South, and my mom always had this story about, those Northerners, they're just not very nice people. It's kind of like they got frozen or something. I grew up in Houston, and I always thought, at the time I thought, originally, they're probably okay. And then every once in a while, somebody from the North had moved to Texas, and there were not many, but a few. And I'd say, hey, these people are fine. And I recognized that this story that I would have really believed from how my mom did, she was kidding, I think, but that it was just interesting to find this story that I had been something that had just been discussed in my family and for so long. So we really want to be able to say, what do I believe? Because my belief, whatever I believe, is how my life is out picturing. So.
And I think this is a great step, and you just said it well. It's an opportunity to ask yourself the question, what do I believe? And as Heidi said, look at your life and you'll know the answer.